Hi, I'm Sarah Cozart with Avant-Garde Prep, and this is the Writing and Language Test for the May 2018 Practice SAT. We're not going to read every word of each passage, but we will read all of paragraphs where they ask us for an introductory phrase or sentence. But otherwise, we're just going to read the sentences that have words in them that we need to understand. We're going to start here with a transition word question because we have all these transition word options. So we'll read the sentence before and the sentence after. In U.S. cities, open space is difficult to come by. In New York, blank, nearly half of the districts have less than 1.5 acres of parkland per 1,000 residents. Remember, we try not to read the actual words that are part of the passage because we don't want to trick our brains into trying to justify why the no change option is correct. It may or may not be correct. It's 25% as likely to be correct as these other ones, but we don't want to give our brains an unconscious push toward trying to choose this when it may not be correct. So we've got in U.S. cities, open space is difficult to come by. And then we have in New York City, nearly half of the districts have less than 1.5 acres of parkland per 1,000 residents. So this looks like it's illustrating a principle from the previous sentence. And for example is the best answer for that. It's not likewise because these two phrases here would need to be have the same weight essentially, but they don't because this is a principle and then this is an example of that principle. So it's really sort of under that principle, so they do not have the same weight. It's not on the other hand because it's not a contradiction or a contrast, but it's also not in addition because this is explaining or illustrating the first concept. It is not another concept in addition to this concept. Transforming landfills into parks has its pitfalls. Blank, it is well worth the effort for communities to invest in these spaces. This is tricky because it looks like it's going to be a transition word question, but when you have several transition word options and then you have a fanboy, so for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so, be very, very careful. What's going on here is that we've got a complete sentence. Transforming landfills into parks has its pitfalls. And then we have another complete sentence, and there's a comma here that we can't change in between the two sentences. It is well worth the effort for communities to invest in these spaces. We don't have any of the other punctuation options for connecting two complete sentences, and we've already got this comma here. So the only option we can do is a fanboy, but. Also, you could note that however and nonetheless are too similar for us to choose, and then we have a however comma and a however without a comma. That should be a hint that you wouldn't be able to choose C and D, and then you should think, oh, because there's a however with a comma and one without, this may be a grammar question rather than a content question, because these are all contrast words. However, but, nonetheless, and then another however, they're all contrasting. So in this situation, it's not a transition word, it is a grammar question. Number 3 asks us to introduce the main idea of the paragraph, and it's an entire sentence, but we're not going to try number 3 until we have gotten to the end of this whole paragraph, which goes on to the second page here, or the third page. So we're going to do 4, 5, and 6, and we'll read the entire paragraph, and then we will come back and do number 3. Land formerly used for garbage is usually inexpensive to buy. It is also blank. The Environmental Protection Agency estimates that the United States has at least 10,000 closed municipal landfills. All right. So since there's a colon here, we know that what comes after is going to sort of illustrate this word. And it says that the EPA thinks that the U.S. has at least 10,000 closed municipal landfills. That means that there are a lot of them. So abundant is the right choice here because we're describing the land formerly used for garbage. It's not prolific because prolific is used to describe production. Maybe a person who writes books would be a prolific novelist if they publish 5 books a year. But the land is not prolific, at least in the way it's describing here, unless it was talking about it produced 500 pounds of potatoes or something like that. It's not magnanimous because the magnanimous is only something that a thinking being can be because it means being generous or merciful or kind. And it's not excessive because the author here is not giving a value judgment saying that there is too much of this land. All it is that there is a lot of it, and abundant is the word that goes with that. By restoring the landscape, these parks also hold tremendous benefits for the environment. Because they transform a blemish into an attractive asset, they have the added benefit of raising property values. A recent paper published by the Trust for Public Land notes that parks are a boon to communities in terms of both health and social development. Exercise, play, blank, exposure to green space have all been linked to improved health. Now this is a situation where we're trying to match the pattern. So we've got word, comma, and phrase. So exercise, comma, play, comma, and exposure to green space. A is the correct choice here. We want the comma to come before the and, not after. So B is incorrect. And we don't want as well as, because these three are all basically included in the been linked to improved health. We don't really want to separate exercise and play from exposure to green space by setting it off by an as well as. And we can't have this semicolon here because just exercise, comma, play is not a complete sentence, and a complete sentence needs to be on both sides of a semicolon. All right. At this point, the writer's looking to add this sentence, and we have to decide if it goes. So let's actually we'll read this sentence here, and decide if it fits. Interest in urban parks declined around the mid-20th century, but has been revived during the past few decades. All right, and then the sentence going on here. The report also notes that community spaces, such as gardens and sports fields, are linked to reduced crime and a stronger bond among neighborhood residents. All right, this does not fit at all. It's talking about popularity of parks 50, 60, 70 years ago, but this is referring to this report by the Trust for Public Land, and we don't want to break that up with this information that's not helpful. So no, we are not going to make the addition, so we're automatically going to cross out A and B. And remember, if we decide not to add something or to delete it, basically if we decide we don't want something, the correct reasons are going to be either because it is off topic, like it is here, or because it provably contradicts or repeats something. So we're not going to choose an answer that says something like no because it doesn't explain well enough that XYZ. Those are never going to be correct I don't want it answers. So let's see what we've got. No, because it includes information that contradicts the main idea of the paragraph. That's not true though. This information does not contradict the main idea of the paragraph because it doesn't really talk about the main idea of the paragraph at all. The paragraph does not say anything about the popularity of parks in the past 150 years. So C is wrong. No, because it distracts from the focus of the paragraph by introducing irrelevant information. There we go. All right, so now what is this paragraph? It's about the fact that there are a lot of these closed municipal landfills available and that parks are a benefit to communities. So, which choice introduces the main idea of the paragraph? There is no official count of the number of parks built on landfills nationwide, but it could be. I don't think that is broad enough because that just talks about how many parks built on landfills there are, and that's not what the rest of the passage is about, or the rest of the paragraph. For many environmental and logistical reasons, not all landfills can be repurposed as parks. Nope, because the paragraph doesn't talk about why not all landfills can be repurposed as parks. Reclaiming landfills for park space offers multiple advantages to urban areas. There we go, because the rest of the paragraph talks about these multiple advantages. Americans generated 251 million tons of trash in 2012, only 34.5% of which was recycled. This paragraph is not about trash. All right, so we've done these 2 pages. Going on to number 7. This is clearly a grammar or a punctuation question. One example of a successful landfill park is Fresh Kills, a space on the coast of Staten Island, New York, that was once a 2,200-acre dump. Okay. When we have an example of something, we do not put any punctuation in between. One example is. There should not be any punctuation there. If you are, the colon can be used if we say, there are many examples of successful landfill parks, colon. Fresh Kills, a space on the coast of Staten Island, was once a 2,300-acre dump. That could work, but you don't use an is and a colon because the colon essentially says the same thing as is. You don't want a comma because you don't want to interrupt. You shouldn't break that phrase up with a comma. And then you don't want a comma between the park and the is because the example is the subject of the sentence and is the verb. And if we have a comma right here, we're essentially separating the subject from the verb. This is a prepositional phrase, an example of what? Of a successful landfill park. So you don't want to say one example, comma, is, because that's incorrect. And even though we've got a prepositional phrase here, having a comma here would break up the subject and the verb. So A is incorrect, B is the answer. Which version of the underlined portion provides the most relevant examples for the sentence? All right, what does the sentence say? The park offers many recreational opportunities largely unavailable in the city. So what we want to do is pick an answer that talks about recreational opportunities largely unavailable in the city. These occur on layers of plastic soil and grass atop the garbage. No, that doesn't talk about the recreational opportunities. Such as horseback riding, nature trails, and kayaking. Looks great. We'll hold on to that. The park's wetlands include coastal grasslands and marshes. No, doesn't talk about recreational opportunities. Among such plants as switchgrass, purple coneflowers, and bugbane. Also does not. All right, so this one was correct. Blank design also features a solar station that will produce enough energy, blank, more than 2,000 homes. Okay, the design of what? It's talking about one park, Freshkills in Staten Island, and so it would be A, its design, the design belonging to it, the park. So we don't want anything plural, and we don't want it to say it is design, because that makes no sense. That's what IT'(S) means. All right, features a solar station that will produce enough energy to power more than 2,000 homes. That's the correct way we want to say it. It's not produce enough energy so that it powers, and for powering of or powering. All of those are not the way that we would communicate enough something to. This is one of those prepositional idiom questions where the word enough needs to go with to. All right, the process of converting, actually we don't have to read the entirety of these paragraphs because we're not asked to summarize them. So we'll just jump right down to number 11. Turning the blank problem into an advantage, Freshkills uses a gas collection system that converts methane into enough energy to heat 22,000 homes, a process that will generate $12 million in revenue to offset the cost of park construction. All right, for context for this, let's look up here. We've got the problem that when buried waste decomposes, it releases flammable gases such as methane, causing a potential health hazard. And we also have, while landfills are inexpensive to purchase, maintenance costs can be high. So is the problem of methane disgusting, noxious, gross, or foul? All right, the only one that works here is noxious, because noxious specifically refers to gas that is poisonous or is very unpleasant or is like an irritant. All of these others are value judgments, and this passage is not trying to make any value judgments. All right, so that is the end. We finished the passage. That is the end of passage 1 for the written language test. We're on the second passage now for the written language part of this test. So let's just jump right in with number 12. Up here, we're going to go back to the beginning of the sentence, which is all the way up here with Holmes. With Holmes at the height of his popularity, readers who purchased the Strand's December 1893 issue were taken aback by the shocking conclusion of the latest installment. Blank, from a waterfall in Switzerland while fighting his enemy Moriarty, was dead. All right, what we want here is this to be a parenthetical statement between, let's see, having plunged and all the way to Moriarty. So we're trying to have a comma on either side, so we'll just say Holmes was dead. So A is the correct answer here. We don't need this comma after plunged because that would separate the verb from the prepositional phrase. I'm going to use brackets this time. From a waterfall. And we can't separate verbs from prepositional phrases, so B is incorrect. We can't have a semicolon because after the colon, we can't just have a semicolon on its own. That's not something that works. You can't have a colon and then one word and a semicolon. And then because there is this comma after Moriarty right here, we can't not have a comma after Holmes, because then it ends up being a run-on sentence with this random comma. So that's why Holmes, comma, having plunged from a waterfall in Switzerland while fighting his enemy Moriarty, comma, was dead. Holmes was dead. All right, number 13, we're doing a transition from the previous paragraph, so we need to finish the paragraph here before we can know what the best transition is. Conan Doyle, in fact, had long desired to end the series. Now we have another sentence that we're going to skip. The question is, which choice provides a quotation from Conan Doyle that best sets up the information that follows in the paragraph? Let's keep reading. Devising the intricate plots of the stories took a great deal of time and effort, and Conan Doyle wanted to dedicate energies elsewhere. His energies. The energies belonging to him. Not one's energies, because he's not talking about a random person, and he is not an it, and neither is he plural. he wanted to dedicate his energies elsewhere. Believing the Holmes stories to be lowbrow work, and it looks like this one is just making sure that the order of the phrase is correct. So let's just skip over it. Believing the Holmes stories to be lowbrow work. That is an introductory phrase, and we need it to describe a person, because only people can believe. So the word that needs to come after here is not going to be a focus, because the focus can't believe. A focus is an idea and it cannot believe. It cannot be focusing, because that's an action, and the action cannot believe. Writing is also an action, and that cannot believe, but he works. Okay, so we've got this introductory phrase, believing the Holmes stories to be lowbrow work, comma, this describes he, yes, that's the correct next word, Conan Doyle, wanted to focus on writing historical epics instead. So this gets the information across that the sentence wants us to get, but it also makes sure that we don't have a misplaced modifier. We don't have this descriptive phrase which is then followed by something that it is not describing. All right, now we can go back and look at 13 and 14. Which choice provides the best transition from the previous paragraph? So really, up here, we've got the beginning paragraph talks about how popular the Sherlock Holmes story, and Holmes died in, Conan Doyle had Holmes die in 1893. And then after this, it talks about how Conan Doyle didn't even really want to be doing these stories. Yeah, we've got this quote, if it had not, lucrative publishing contracts had made it difficult to walk away from the series, but by 1893 the author had made up his mind. If I had not killed him, he would certainly have killed me, Conan Doyle remarked ominously. All right, so the rest of the paragraph is, we're switching from the shocking moment of Holmes' death to the reasons why Conan Doyle wanted to kill him off in the stories. So, do we want having introduced Moriarty in the same story? Nope, that doesn't really transition well over there. Having given Holmes the ability to adopt a variety of costumes and disguises? No, that's not really connecting either of those two ideas. Not knowing that his works would be later adapted for stage and screen, that's also not talked about in either of these paragraphs. Though Holmes's death seemed sudden to readers, this makes sense. And then we finish the sentence, Conan Doyle had, in fact, long desired to end the series. So we've got this juxtaposition between sudden to readers and Conan Doyle long desiring to end the series. All right, and now we're looking here for a choice that provides a quotation from Conan Doyle that best sets up the information that follows in the paragraph. Well, he wanted to dedicate his energies elsewhere. He thought Holmes was lowbrow. He was getting a lot of money for it, but he thought writing the stories would kill him. I am weary of his name, the author declared. It was still the Sherlock Holmes stories for which the public clamored, the author complained. It doesn't say anything about the public clamoring for it, so we're going to skip that one. Not sure about A. We might choose that one. We might choose a better one. He takes my mind from better things, the author lamented of Holmes. That makes sense, because the rest of this sentence says, devising the intricate plots took a great deal of time and effort, and he wanted to dedicate his energies elsewhere. So I think that's going to be the answer, but let's just double check. I was amazed at the concern expressed by the public, the surprised author declared. No, what follows in the sentence in the paragraph is not his amazement at the concern. So we're going to get rid of A also and choose C. This page. We've got another introductory question introducing the topic of this paragraph, and the paragraph ends on this page, so we'll just read the rest of the paragraph and answer these questions first. Making headlines around the world, the death of such a beloved character, public outcry. The author received an abundance of angry letters petitioning for Holmes's return, and blank. Which choice provides an additional example that is most similar to the one already in the sentence? Okay, so we want an additional example that's most similar to the one already in the sentence. What is this example here? The author received an abundance of angry letters petitioning for Holmes's return. So we want something that fits into being similar to this. All right, and they were not enough to make him change his mind? No, that's not an additional example. That's moving the story about Holmes and Conan Doyle forward. So it's not an additional example. It's telling us the consequence. Keep Holmes alive clubs formed. That does seem to fit, because people were writing him angry letters to ask for Holmes to return, and they were forming clubs. So let's just hold on to that one. Those writing from him to him came from all parts of society. That doesn't fit in with an additional example of him receiving letters asking for him to revive Holmes. he turned his attention to other forms of writing. Again, it doesn't fit in with being an additional example. It is even said that Londoners donned, or that means put on, something. We're trying to combine these two sentences, black armbands and solidarity. Such armbands are a traditional symbol of mourning. We want to combine these, and right now the problem is that we don't need to reference armbands and armbands twice. That seems repetitive, so we're going to try to not mention it twice. What works best? It is even said that Londoners donned. We don't want such black armbands because that makes it seem as if we have already mentioned the black armbands and the such is referring back to it, so that doesn't work. Black armbands, these being, we don't like being, a traditional symbol of mourning and solidarity. That's not helpful. Black armbands, comma, a traditional symbol of mourning, comma, and solidarity. That looks good. We'll go back and plug it in a moment and just check. A traditionally symbolic black armbands in mourning and solidarity. No, they're not traditionally symbolic. Those two words shouldn't be right next to each other. They should be a traditional symbol. Okay, so let's try this. It is even said that Londoners donned black armbands. Now we could jump over here, in solidarity. That works. It is even said that Londoners donned black armbands, a traditional symbol of mourning, in solidarity. That works. Okay. Conan Doyle's decision was a serious blow, not only to the public, but also to the magazine. Strand editors panicked as 20,000 people canceled blank subscriptions. All right, the people are plural, and they canceled their subscriptions. It's not canceling the Strand's subscriptions, it's the people canceling their subscriptions. Now we can go back up to 17, which introduces the topic of this paragraph. This is about how people really loved Sherlock Holmes and didn't want him to die. Young readers were especially saddened at the loss of their hero. We don't really have anything about young readers specifically in here. That's not what the paragraph illustrates. The periodicals of the time played an important role in expressing the public's feelings. That is also not what the paragraph illustrates. It had been only 18 months since the Strand published its first Holmes story, but the magazine's success was already dependent on the detective. We talk about that at the end of the paragraph, but that doesn't refer or introduce all of the statements about how much fans liked it. While Conan Doyle was more than ready to part with the character, legions of fans were not. There we go. That fits best. All right, 2 more questions here. After nearly 8 years, however, Conan Doyle blank. Okay, which choice best maintains the tone of this passage? This is not a casual passage. This is really more of a historical passage. And remember, we only need to decide between 2 main tones in these written language passages, and it's casual or informal versus formal. And this is a formal passage. Caved is really more, it's not slang, but it's more informal. So that wouldn't work. Sold out doesn't work. Loosened up doesn't work. Relented. These all mean the same thing, but relented is the more formal way to say each of these things. All right, and then one more question here. Though Conan Doyle would always harbor ambivalence about the series, blank, it is the large body of Holmes stories and countless adaptations for stage and screen that have been responsible for the author's lasting legacy. All right, what we have here from the though to the series is this introductory phrase. There is a comma right here, but we do not need a but, because this is an introductory phrase, and now we have the main subject of the sentence. It, subject, is, verb. The large body of Holmes stories and countless adaptations for stage and screen. So the subject and a verb are right here. So we just really want a comma after series. We can't say, though Conan Doyle would always harbor ambivalence about the series. That's not a complete sentence because it's a dependent phrase, so we can't have it on one side of a semicolon. And then if we do though Conan Doyle, etc., series, comma, while, etc., then we keep just having dependent phrases and we never get any subject and verb. So that doesn't work either. All right, that's the end of passage 2 on the written language test. All right, here we go on passage 3. This one is about ancient acoustics in Greece. And we start out with a transition word here. So let's read the sentence before, because we've got a transition word in the middle of the sentence, and then we'll read the sentence with it in it. So that looks like we have to go all the way back to the beginning. Built in southern Greece in the 4th century BCE and rediscovered in the late 19th century CE, the outdoor amphitheater of Epidaurus is renowned for allowing performers' voices to carry even to the last of its 55 rows. The source of this acoustic quality, blank, has long been misunderstood. All right, therefore is not correct because it's not helping us get to the conclusion of an argument. However, could possibly work. Instead is not correct because it is making it seem like it's an alternative to something, but we're not giving alternatives here. And consequently makes it seem like it is a consequence of something or a result. So however works best here. The source of this acoustic quality, however, has long been misunderstood. So we have this acoustic quality, but we don't understand it. That works. It, blank, until 2007, that a study by Nico de Klerk and Cindy de Keyser of the Georgia Institute of Technology demonstrated that the theater's seating arrangement is the source of its excellent acoustics. All right, so it was not until 2007 that a study demonstrated that the theater's seating arrangement, etc. If we say it had not been, that makes it seem like there's going to be some contrast coming up, which there's not. Again, would not have been makes it into a hypothetical, and it's not. It's telling us about a study. And it is not until 2007. The whole passage is written in the past tense, so we can't say it's not until 2007 that this was discovered. All right, moving on. Cindy de Keyser of the Georgia Institute of Technology. So we've got a study. Now we've got a prepositional phrase by Nico de Klerk and Cindy de Keyser of the Georgia Institute of Technology. There's the prepositional phrase demonstrated. Subject, study, verb, demonstrated. And we don't want to separate study and demonstrated by any punctuation. So A is the correct answer. There should not be any punctuation here. We don't need a dash because this is not an afterthought. We don't need, it was not until 2007 that a study, that's basically what we're saying. If we put a period here and then start over with an it, you can't put a period there because a study by Nico de Klerk, etc. of Georgia Institute of Technology, that's not a complete sentence, the first half here. And we don't need a which, we just need a study demonstrated. So that's why A is correct there. All right, number 12. Which choice most effectively addresses the theories presented in the previous sentence? So let's read the theories in the previous sentence. Observers speculated that, all right, here are the theories. The direction in which the wind blows, the rhythm of the performances in ancient Greece, or the amplifying properties of actors' masks allowed sound from the stage to reach the entire audience. But while these factors may have had some effect, now we have to choose something that addresses these theories. But let's finish the sentence first. And actors have performed there without special enunciation or augmentation. All right, so we've got this option here. The Greek soprano Maria Callas performed at the theater in 1960. That is irrelevant. So we're trying to have some contrast to direction the wind blows, the rhythm of the performances, or the amplifying properties of the actors' masks. The theater provides a fitting venue for the annual Epidaurus Festival, which features stagings of ancient Greek classics. That's also irrelevant. Audience members continue to enjoy the beautiful view of a lush landscape beyond the stage. Also irrelevant. Modern plays have been staged at Epidaurus on windless days. There we go. That addresses the direction in which the wind blows section. Since actors remained audible under all of these blank, the mystery of the theater's acoustics endured. Okay, conditions and circumstances is redundant. We don't need A. Conditions and in these situations, also redundant. Conditions and were able to be heard. Nope, because we've got remained audible, so that's redundant. Conditions, that's all we need. Which choice most effectively introduces the information in the paragraph? We're going to read the whole paragraph and then decide. De Klerk and de Keyser suspected that the key might be the way sound waves reflect or break apart when they encounter ridged surfaces. Applying mathematical models derived in part from de Klerk's earlier research, which had examined the way sound waves reflect off a step pyramid at Chichen Itza in Mexico, they found that the tiered rows of limestone benches in the Epidaurus Theater affect sound waves in an unusual way. Now we're going to try to connect these, combine these sentences. We've got here, which we're not keeping, the waves encounter the theater's seats. As this happens, sounds with frequencies lower than 500 hertz are significantly dampened, while higher frequency sounds are reflected with little diminution. All right, we want to try to get rid of this as this happens. That's not necessary. After an encounter between the waves and the theater's seats, An encounter is an odd way of putting that, because it's this constant process as this happens. So it's not like a one-time thing in an encounter. When the waves encounter the theater's seats, that works better, because what it really means, we're going to hold on to this one and we think it's going to be right, but what it really means is when the waves get there. We're not using encounter as in like one moment of an interaction. We're using it as when they get there. The waves happen to encounter the theater's seats and sounds with frequencies. Nope. We don't want to connect these two phrases as if one piece and the other piece are equally weighty, when actually we're saying this happens and then this happens. When this happens, this happens. So just having a phrase and then another phrase connected with and does not give us the when of that statement. It doesn't help us with the meaning. The waves encounter the theater's seats. Thus, sounds with frequencies lower than 500 hertz are significantly dampened. Nope. This makes it seem like it's proving some sort of conclusion, but it doesn't give us the when. And so it actually isn't proving anything. We can't have a thus, this happens, without the relationship of when they encounter the seats, the sounds with lower frequencies are dampened. All right, we've got an ordering question here, as we see by this number in brackets. So let's go down here. Sentence 7 is what we need to keep our eye out for. And all the options are for either leaving it where it is at the end or having it go at the very beginning. So what we want to do is look at all of the sentences around 1 and 2 and 3 and see if there is anything that feels out of place there. And if it doesn't, then we will have to leave it where it is down here at 7. All right, let's read this paragraph, and we'll go through and answer the other questions as we go as well. This filtering effect explains why performers are so easy to hear in the theater. All right, what does this refer to? The filtering effect up here, where sounds with frequencies lower than 500 hertz are significantly dampened or quieted, while higher frequency sounds are reflected with little diminution. That means they're not quieted or, quieted is the only word I can think of. So low frequency sounds are made quieter and higher frequency sounds aren't really changed. This filtering effect. Okay, so we know that sentence 1 should stay where it is and we should not put a sentence on top of it because it refers immediately back to the previous previous paragraph. This filtering effect explains why performers are so easy to hear in the theater. Low frequency sounds, such as wind, rustling trees, and other noises coming from the area around the theater, are reduced when they bounce off the seats, whereas the high frequency sounds coming from the actors remain relatively unchanged. Doesn't seem like we should break up 1 and 2 either, because this sentence 2, is explaining why performers are so easy to hear in the theater. Performers' voices also contain low tones, and these too are muted by the theater's seats. Again, it doesn't seem like we should break these up, so I'm leaning toward leaving 7 where it is unless there's something very wrong with it. But this sound reduction doesn't impair actors' audibility because of a neurological phenomenon called virtual pitch. This capacity helps people hear human voices more clearly than blank important sounds. Okay, what are we comparing here? Hear human voices more clearly than less important sounds. We're comparing hearing the voices and hearing other sounds. And so we're not comparing the voices to the hearing. That's why A is incorrect. And we're not comparing the voices to having heard in the past. And we're not comparing to the voices with those of less. There's nothing that we can use to refer to those of less. That doesn't make sense. When exposed to speech that lacks blank typical lower tones. All right, we're talking about speech and we're describing it. What kind of speech? That lacks its, belonging to it, its, typical lower tones. It's not plural, so it's not A or D, and it's not that lacks it is typical lower tones. Oh, sorry. So get rid of that circle there. All right. When exposed to speech that lacks its typical lower tones, the human brain automatically reconstructs the missing frequencies. Here's sentence 7. At Epidaurus, the combination of virtual pitch and the sound dampening effect of the seats, blank, performers' voices to be heard fully and clearly from any seat. All right, let's look at this word here. We've got different versions of allow, so it's a subject-verb agreement, and it's the combination that we are matching with allow, because we've got the combination of prepositional phrase, of virtual pitch and the sound dampening effect of the seats. So the combination allows, singular word, singular noun, singular verb. All right. Now, I do think sentence 7 should stay where it is now because it's a really good conclusion to this paragraph. It says the combination of virtual pitch, which we talk about later in the paragraph, and the sound dampening effect of the seats, which we talk about earlier in the paragraph. So that's good, and there's no reason to break up any of these sentences. So we're going to leave it where it is. And that is the end of passage 3. All right, here we go on passage 4, the final passage of this test. We're going to start with this 34, which means we have to go back to the beginning of the sentence. The solar power industry in the United States has seen dramatic growth during recent years as energy consumers have sought to become more self-sufficient, diminish their environmental blank energy bills. Okay, we've got these 3 things. Consumers have sought to, whoop, that's a terrible line. Consumers have sought to do what? 1, become more self-sufficient. 2, diminish their environmental impact. And 3, lower their energy bills. And lowering their energy bills is not a complete sentence, so A cannot work. We don't need this plus here. If we just say do A, do B, and do C, that's perfectly fine. We don't want to say with lower energy bills because and lower their energy bills is the 3rd thing that they want to do. There we go. That's what we want. They want to become more self-sufficient, diminish their environmental impact, and lower their energy bills. All right, which choice most effectively interprets data from the table that's on the next page to set up the information provided in the rest of the sentence? Let's look at that table all the way down here. Solar jobs by sector 2010 to 2014. We've got these different jobs, and then we've got total, all of the solar jobs. And the growth rate is 85.9%, and this is how many jobs there were. And then with these individual growth rates for these other sections, and I guess this is all averaged together. What do we need to say here? The sentence says 2010 overall number of solar jobs, so that means we're going to be looking in that total section. In the U.S. economy, blank, what did it do? With the addition of approximately 80,000 jobs in manufacturing, sales and distribution, installation, and more. Okay, the overall number of solar jobs from 2010 to 2014, what did it do? The overall number, that's down here, it went up by 85.9%, because these are the numbers that are growing here. So I think what we're going to do is skyrocketed by nearly 86%. Yep, that works. It wasn't 72% because that was the percentage of growth only in sales and distribution. It did not hold steady because, again, through every year. And it did not fluctuate between 30 and 121% because those 2 percentages are for 2 different sectors. And they weren't asking us about sectors. They were asking about the overall number of jobs. The next question is also asking us to use data from the table to support the point made in the first part of the sentence. So here's the sentence, and let's read the first part. Job opportunities in installation have soared. All right, we want soaring installation job opportunities. From 2010 to 2014, the number of solar installation jobs increased 121%. And what do we have here? Solar installation, okay, 121%. And then we've got this number, and this number. So if we're talking about solar installation, these are the numbers we're going to be pulling from. It increased to 20,185 jobs. Nope, that number is not correct for 2014. So A is wrong. From 43,934 in 2010, correct, to 97,031 jobs in 2014. That's correct. Let's see. It increased 121% less than the growth rate for jobs in manufacturing. That's incorrect. From 11,744 jobs. Nope, because that's for sales and distribution. All right, which choice best interprets the material that follows in the paragraph? So we've got 37. Let's continue reading the end of this paragraph here. Jobs in this sector of the solar industry are quite profitable. In 2013, solar installers, okay, so that's how we know which sector we're talking about. We're talking about installation. Solar installers' wages average $23.63 per hour, comparable to something. Okay, so what we want is talking about how it's profitable to install solar panels. With California leading the country in solar jobs. Nope, not talking about parts of the country leading in solar jobs overall. In addition to being abundant and accessible, that works because we've got these solar installers up here. The only requirement is to have a high school diploma. So that means it's accessible, and it means, let's see, the number of solar installation jobs increase. So that goes with abundant. So that seems to work. Though they are less plentiful in some areas. It doesn't say anything in the passage about where they're less plentiful, so we're not going to go with that. Also requiring some knowledge of maintenance. Also, let's see. It doesn't have anything elsewhere in the paragraph about that. So B is the correct answer. And now we have a comparison again. Comparable to. Okay, the wages are comparable to, now, those of skilled electricians and plumbers. That sounds good. Comparable to a skilled electrician or plumber? No, because the wages are not comparable to a person. Comparable to wages earned by a skilled electrician and plumbers. That would work okay, but we can't combine one singular skilled electrician and then add plural plumbers. So that doesn't work either. It would need to be skilled electricians and plumbers, like it says in A, or by a skilled electrician or a plumber. And then wages comparable to skilled electricians and plumbers. Nope, because we're not comparing people to wages. All right, the rapid proliferation of well-paying jobs in solar installation blank, largely attributable to the falling price of solar energy. All right, subject-verb agreement here. Subject is proliferation. We've got a prepositional phrase here. Proliferation of what? Of well-paying jobs in solar installation. So we need to put proliferation next to some version of the verb to be. We always get rid of answers that include being, and proliferation is singular, and so we want is. We don't have proliferation have been or are. That doesn't work. Are largely attributable to the falling price of solar energy. When we attribute something to something, we do not include any punctuation. So we don't want anything with a colon, a comma, or a dash. All right, which choice effectively combines the sentences at the underlined portion? Let's go back here. Solar power is now competitive with other energy sources in many markets. This leads corporations, utility companies, and private homeowners to use it. Okay, so what we want to do is just get rid of these extra words here, but continue the meaning of these two sentences together. Solar power is now competitive with other energy sources in many markets. A development that has led corporations and private homeowners to use it. That could work. An aspect of solar power that has led, that doesn't seem like it's saving any words. Such competition has led, and that could work because we've got a semicolon here, and that is fewer words. And it mentions the competitiveness with this competition leading. That's not going to work. I think an aspect of solar power that has led is too wordy. Let's see. I think it's going to be a development that has led because we've got this now competitive. We don't need to repeat the idea of competition. So we've got solar power is now competitive with other energy sources in many markets, comma, a development that has led corporations, utility companies, and private homeowners to use it. All right, last three questions. Which choice provides the best transition from the previous paragraph? Let's go back and read this ending sentence here. Indeed, the primary reason most consumers cite for installing new solar power systems is not to benefit the environment, but to save money. Okay, consumers want to save money. That's why they want solar power systems. And now we're transitioning paragraph. Something, 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 saving money over helping the environment. Technological and economic developments in the solar power industry ensure they are doing both. Consumers are not the only ones for whom solar power is a win-win scenario. Blank. The words are all the same here. Though as a result of their own efforts, industry employees can meet demand for an environmentally friendly service while something. All right, so I think a good transition is going to be something that talks about being environmentally friendly and saving money. Even though, because some power companies don't provide information about saving money. I don't think that's a good transition from the previous paragraph. Even though consumers of solar power systems may prioritize saving money, that works because we're talking about up here, they say their priority is not to benefit the environment, but to save money. Even though these consumers' priority is not to save money, is to prioritize saving money over helping the environment, technological and economic developments in the solar power industry ensure that they are doing both. We want this both to be referring to saving money and helping the environment. And here it's got consumers might choose one over the other, but these companies can ensure they're doing both. Let's see about why this is wrong. While it remains unclear whether people in urban areas prefer saving money, it doesn't remain unclear because they've mentioned that consumers like to install solar panels to save money. Since just installing solar panels doesn't immediately guarantee that people will prioritize saving money, that contradicts what was said up here, that the main reason people install them is to save money. All right, now we've got consumers are not the only ones for whom solar power is a win-win scenario, though. This is the correct answer. We've got a colon here connecting two complete sentences. As a result of their own efforts, industry employees can meet demand for an environmentally friendly service while also something, something, something. Okay, the reason this is correct is because we're going to get to it through narrowing it down, but I wanted you to hear it in the way my voice was reading it so that it would make sense. Consumers are not the only ones for whom solar power is a win-win scenario, though as a result of their own efforts, industry employees can meet demand for an environmentally friendly service. The problem with A is that it is a comma splice. Complete sentence, and it's only connected by that comma that we cannot change. We can put a though at the end here as if it is the end of a sentence. We could totally put a period right here and start a new sentence with a capital A over as. We don't want another comma here because as a result, and then we've got this prepositional phrase, of their own efforts. Whoops, the prepositional phrase ends down here. Of their own efforts. We don't want to separate the result from the result of what. So the comma here is wrong, but also we've already said we can't have just this comma and then as a result of their own efforts with this complete sentence. And then again, you can't connect two complete sentences with only a dash. So that does not work either. All right. While doing something else, let's read these answers. They can meet demand for an environmentally friendly service while blank. Also making a good living for themselves. That sounds okay. While they also meanwhile make a good living for themselves. That's too wordy. We don't need that meanwhile. While simultaneously making a good living for themselves at the same time. Okay, come on. Simultaneously and at the same time mean the same thing. That's redundant. While making a good living for themselves is something they can do at the same time. That is way too wordy. So just A works. While also making a good living for themselves. All right, that is the end of the written language test for the May 2018 practice SAT.